Alaska is one of the most mysterious places on Earth. Its endless forests, frozen rivers, and isolated towns hide stories that sometimes never receive answers. In a land where mountains stretch for hundreds of miles, and the ocean disappears into darkness, people can vanish without leaving a single trace. Over the years, investigators have faced cases that seem almost impossible to solve. People who walked out of buildings and were never seen again. Passengers who boarded ships but never returned home. Tonight, we're looking at 7 chilling mysteries from Alaska cases where the truth may still be hidden somewhere between the wilderness and the sea. And some of these stories are more disturbing than you might expect. August 28, 2004. The Gulf of Alaska is quiet at night, but not peaceful. The dark water stretches endlessly, cold and unforgiving, swallowing light from the stars above. Somewhere in the middle of that vast ocean, a massive cruise ship glides through the waves, carrying thousands of passengers toward the Alaskan coast. You're a cabin steward working the evening rounds. Your job is simple: check rooms, replace towels, make sure everything is ready for the next day. Most cabins are quiet. Guests are enjoying dinner shows, casinos, or the ship's crowded bars. Then you reach cabin 7034. You knock twice, no answer. That's normal. Many passengers are out late. Using your master key, you open the door and step inside. Immediately, something feels off. The bed is perfectly made. The bathroom sink is dry. The towels you placed yesterday are still folded exactly the same way. Nothing has been touched. You check the passenger list again. The cabin belongs to a woman traveling alone. According to the ship's system, she boarded in Seattle with the rest of the guests. So where is she? You report it to your supervisor. He barely reacts. Don't worry about it, he says. Just clean the room. The next day you check again. 3. Her suitcase is still in the closet. Her shoes sit neatly near the bed. Day 4. Her SeaPass card hasn't been used once. No drinks, no restaurant visits, no excursions. Day 5. You report it again, insisting something isn't right. Your supervisor looks irritated now. Just do your job, he says quietly, and forget about it. Some are boxed, some are donated. Within hours, cabin 734 is prepared for the next guest as if nothing ever happened. Out on the open ocean, there are no witnesses, no nearby police departments, and sometimes if someone vanishes at sea, the truth sinks with them. But the cruise ship disappearance wasn't the first mystery connected to Alaska. More than 30 years earlier, a teenage girl walked out of a building in a small coastal town. She was never seen again. And years later, investigators would realize her disappearance might have crossed paths with one of the most terrifying serial killers in American history. But when police asked him about her, he refused to confess. July 7, 1973. 17-year-old Megan Emerick had recently arrived there to attend a vocational training program. She grew up in a small Alaskan community where outdoor life was normal. Hunting, fishing, and long winters were simply part of growing up. But Megan wanted more independence. The program in Seward was her chance to build a future beyond the small town she came from. That evening she was doing something completely ordinary: laundry. Inside the dormitory's laundry room, Megan was finishing a routine chore before returning to her room. At some point she walked out and disappeared. No one heard anything unusual. No one reported seeing her leave the building. Her dorm room still contained everything she owned: clothes, personal belongings, her identification. She had left wearing a white checkered shirt, blue jeans, and boots. At first, no one panicked. Students assumed she had gone out with friends or taken a walk near the harbor. But after 3 days with no sign of her, someone finally contacted the police. Officers searched the campus and nearby woods. Divers checked sections of the bay. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of a struggle. No witnesses. For years, Megan's case slowly faded into the background of Alaska's many missing persons reports. Then, in 1983, a shocking arrest changed everything. Police captured a quiet Anchorage baker named Robert Hansen. Behind his ordinary life hid something horrifying. Hansen confessed to abducting and murdering multiple women. But the most disturbing discovery wasn't the confession. It was a map investigators found hidden in his home. Marked across the map were more than 20 small X's scattered throughout the wilderness. Each one marked a place where a victim had been buried. When detectives studied the map, 2 of the marks were near Seward, exactly where Megan disappeared. During interrogation, Hansen admitted something unsettling. He had been in Seward the same day Megan vanished. He even owned a boat dock nearby. But when detectives asked him if Megan was one of his victims, he refused to answer. He confessed to many murders, just not hers. Even more disturbing, 4 of the marks on Hansen's map were never explained. Their secrets died with him years later. And if Megan was buried at one of those locations, her remains may still lie hidden somewhere in Alaska's vast wilderness. But her case wouldn't be the only mystery haunting the state. August 30, 1974. Chujiak, Alaska was still a rough frontier town back then. Dense forests surrounded scattered homes and trailers along a single highway that connected Anchorage to smaller northern communities. For Sandra Lee Davis, moving to Alaska had been supposed to save her marriage. She had relocated from Utah with her husband and 2 daughters, hoping a new beginning might bring the family closer together. Instead, things only grew worse. In letters to friends, Sandra described feeling lonely and trapped. The isolation of Alaska made everything harder. By late summer, the marriage had finally reached its breaking point. That evening, Sandra and her husband signed divorce papers inside their trailer home. Around 7 p.m., Sandra quietly stood up and walked outside. Her husband and daughters stayed inside watching television. They assumed she needed some air. Or maybe she was heading to the roadside payphone nearby. She had spent hours there the previous night talking to friends and relatives, so no one followed her. No one worried. But Sandra never came back. She had left wearing a blue denim jacket and sneakers. She carried no purse, no money, no identification. Days passed before authorities were contacted. Alaska state troopers brought in search dogs. The dogs followed her scent from the trailer down the road, directly to the payphone, and then the trail ended. Unfortunately, the scent was already several days old and had likely been washed away by rain. Investigators later discovered a handwritten note Sandra had written earlier. In it, she apologized for the failed marriage and asked her husband to take care of their daughters. But something about the note was strange. It never mentioned suicide. And despite extensive searches of nearby forests and waterways, no remains were ever found. Over time, several theories emerged. Some believed Sandra might have left Alaska entirely, starting a new life somewhere else. But her social security number was never used again. Her bank accounts remained untouched. Another possibility was far more chilling. A distressed woman standing alone at a payphone late at night would have been easy to notice. If that happened, Sandra's disappearance could have been a random crime that no one ever witnessed. Even 50 years later, no one knows what happened after she walked down that road. But Alaska's mysteries didn't end there. Nearly 20 years later, a brutal murder on a remote island would spark fear inside an entire community. And what made that case so strange wasn't the evidence. April 30, 1993. Kodiak Island sits far off Alaska's southern coast, surrounded by rough seas and steep mountains. The town itself is small and tight-knit, where most residents know each other by name. Carlos Medina had built a respected life there. Originally from the Philippines, he had arrived years earlier looking for work in Alaska's fishing industry. Like many immigrants before him, he started with long shifts on commercial boats and slowly worked his way upward. Eventually, he opened his own restaurant and karaoke bar. Within the local Filipino community, Carlos was seen as a success story, hard-working, ambitious, someone who had achieved the American dream. But on the evening of April 30th, something unusual happened. Carlos never showed up for work. At first, employees assumed he had simply taken the night off. The next day, police discovered his silver pickup truck abandoned near a gravel pit outside town. Inside the vehicle, there was blood, a lot of it. The following morning, a Coast Guard helicopter flying over nearby Pillar Mountain spotted something disturbing along the road near the summit. It was Carlos. His body had been dumped along the mountainside. He had been beaten so badly that investigators struggled to identify the weapon used. His watch and ring were found scattered along the road nearby, suggesting a violent struggle had taken place. Police immediately launched a homicide investigation. But something strange happened. Almost no one talked. In most murder cases, investigators received dozens, sometimes hundreds of tips within days. In this case, they received only a handful. Witnesses seemed afraid. One woman who had spoken briefly with investigators reportedly fled the island after receiving a threatening phone call warning her to stay quiet. Detectives considered several possible motives: robbery, business disputes, even jealousy within the community over Carlos's success. But rumors and suspicions never turned into solid evidence. The investigation stalled. Then the case took an even stranger turn. Carlos's own family began accusing one another. His brother became convinced another relative was responsible and spent decades trying to prove it. Those accusations fractured the family, creating divisions that still exist today. Meanwhile, the murder itself remains unsolved. Carlos Medina's body was eventually returned to the Philippines and buried there. But the question of who killed him and why has never been answered. In Kodiak, some people still believe someone in the community knows exactly what happened that night. They just never said a word. And while that mystery lingered, another case in Alaska would soon unfold, one involving a missing woman, a deadly manhunt across multiple states, and a confession that only made the mystery deeper. February 27, 1995. Fairbanks, Alaska. Winter still gripped the city tightly. Temperatures dropped far below freezing, and the surrounding forests were buried beneath thick snow and frozen ground. 36-year-old Cynthia St. John had just finished her shift at a local fast food restaurant. She was small, barely over 5 feet tall, and weighed around 100 pounds. Friends described her as quiet but kind, someone who rarely caused trouble. One small detail about Cynthia stood out. On her ankle was a tattoo with the initials RS. They belonged to her husband, Roger. That night, Cynthia left work and headed home. After that, no one saw her again. At first, her disappearance didn't raise immediate alarms. Her parents lived nearly 4,000 miles away in Mississippi, so days passed before they realized something was wrong. When they couldn't reach their daughter, they contacted authorities in Alaska. Police began asking questions, but something strange quickly caught their attention. Cynthia's husband, Roger St. John, didn't seem interested in helping the search. Instead of contacting investigators or organizing search efforts, he attempted to collect money that Cynthia's parents had wired to Alaska for her. To detectives, it felt suspicious. Then the case took a shocking turn hundreds of miles away. On May 9, 1995, Cynthia's parents closed their small roadside bar in Mississippi and walked toward their nearby home. Somewhere along that short path, they were ambushed. Both were shot at close range. The killer stole around $100 in their pickup truck before disappearing into the night. Almost immediately, investigators focused on one man, Roger St. John. What followed was a multi-state manhunt. Authorities tracked Roger across several states as he moved from motel to motel, passing stolen checks and using credit cards to stay ahead of the police. For weeks, investigators chased him through the southern United States. Finally, on May 24, the pursuit came to an end in a motel room in Little Rock, Arkansas. Roger was found dead from a drug overdose. Next to him was a long, rambling letter written on scraps of paper. In the letter, Roger admitted to killing his in-laws. But then he wrote something even more disturbing. He claimed Cynthia was already dead. Yet he refused to reveal where her body was buried. Investigators believed the confession was an attempt to twist the story in his favor, blaming Cynthia's parents for her death. The truth may have been much simpler and darker. Many detectives believe Roger killed Cynthia in Alaska weeks earlier before traveling south to silence the only people who would never stop searching for her. Despite extensive searches of the forests around Fairbanks, Cynthia's body was never found. Today her case remains officially unsolved, a murder that may have been confessed to but never fully proven. And tragically, Cynthia wouldn't be the last young woman to disappear in Alaska without a trace. Just 1 year later, in a remote community with barely any roads, a teenage girl would walk home in the early morning darkness. She was only a few minutes away from safety, but she never made it there. September 29, 1996, Bethel, Alaska. The town sits deep in western Alaska along the Kuskokwim River. Unlike most American cities, Bethel has no highway connecting it to the outside world. Planes and boats are the only reliable ways in or out. With a population of only a few thousand people, it's the kind of place where neighbors know each other and news travels fast. But on one cold autumn night, a young girl disappeared in a way that still confuses investigators decades later. 17-year-old Stella Yvonne had spent the evening with friends around town. She was small, just under 5 feet tall, with long curly hair that reached down to her waist. Those who knew her described her as friendly, energetic, and deeply connected to her family. Late that night, sometime after 3 a.m., Stella returned to the house where she lived with her grandmother, but when she tried the door, it was locked. She knocked and tried to wake her grandmother, but there was no answer. Standing outside in the cold, Stella decided to ask for help. Across the street sat the Bethel Police Department. She walked inside and explained the situation. One of the officers offered to drive her to her sister's nearby apartment so she wouldn't have to wait outside all night. Around 4:30 a.m., the officer dropped Stella off safely at the building. For a moment, everything seemed normal. About an hour later, Stella's sister watched from the window as the teenager stepped outside and began walking back toward her grandmother's house. The distance was short, just a few minutes down the road, but Stella never arrived. It was the last time anyone saw her. When she failed to return home, her family quickly realized something was terribly wrong. Search teams combed the town and surrounding tundra. Volunteers, police officers, and local residents all joined the effort. But there was nothing. No footprints. No witnesses. No signs of where she might have gone. For more than a decade, Stella's disappearance remained a complete mystery. Then, in 2009, something unexpected happened. During a police response to a domestic violence call, a man reportedly made a chilling statement to an officer. "She's in the well, the one near Fish and Wildlife?" The officer documented the comment and attempted to locate the area mentioned, but winter conditions made searching difficult, and the lead was never fully investigated. Records later confirmed that several abandoned wells existed around Bethel, including some left behind by old federal installations. Yet none were publicly confirmed to have been thoroughly searched. To Stella's family, that unanswered lead became one of the most frustrating parts of the case, because in a small town with only a few roads, it's difficult to imagine someone simply vanishing without someone noticing. Today, Stella Yvonne's disappearance remains classified as suspicious. Her family still hopes someone in the community knows what happened that night, because sometimes the truth isn't hidden by distance or wilderness, sometimes it's hidden by silence. And a few years later, another Alaskan mystery would unfold, one involving a disciplined traveling nurse, 2 suspicious strangers, and a red rose left inside an abandoned vehicle high in the mountains. June 19, 2001. Anchorage, Alaska. Thomas Nutsey lived a disciplined life. At 52 years old, the Vietnam veteran worked as a traveling nurse, moving between temporary assignments across Alaska. His lifestyle was simple and structured. He stayed in modest motels, kept most of his belongings inside a small storage unit, and rarely strayed from routine. So when he failed to show up for a scheduled nursing job in Bethel, people immediately knew something was wrong. 2 days later, his employer reported him missing. Investigators began retracing his final known movements. The last confirmed sighting occurred the night before he vanished. Security footage from a convenience store showed Nutsy buying cigarettes, lighters, and snacks. Odd purchases for a man who reportedly didn't smoke. But the strangest detail wasn't what he bought. It was who he was with. Standing beside him was an unidentified young woman with long dark hair. No one knew who she was. Around the same time, neighbors at Nutsy's motel reported something suspicious. They claimed a man and a woman had broken into his Jeep Cherokee and driven away with it. The following morning, motel staff entered Nutsy's room and discovered a strange scene. A couple was inside the room that didn't belong there. A woman was sitting on the bed while a man with severely decayed teeth lay on the floor. When confronted, the man eventually left, but Nutsy was nowhere to be found. Days later, investigators located his Jeep abandoned near a ski area inside Chugach State Park. The vehicle sat quietly in the mountain parking lot, unlocked, the keys placed inside the glove compartment, and resting on the dashboard was something investigators couldn't explain. A single red rose. Search teams launched a massive operation across the surrounding mountains. Dozens of rescuers combed through thick forests and steep terrain covering nearly 200 square miles. They found nothing, no clothing, no tracks, no remains. Later, Nutsy's nephew discovered something else disturbing. Inside his uncle's unlocked storage unit were Nutsy's wallet, phone, mountain bike, and the same cigarettes and lighters seen in the security footage. Items he likely never intended to use. Police initially suggested Nutsy might have wandered into the wilderness and died from exposure. But his family rejected that theory. They believed the strangers seen in his motel room were involved in something far more sinister. Two people who appeared suddenly and disappeared just as quickly. More than 20 years later, Thomas Nutsy has never been found, but his strange disappearance would soon be overshadowed by another mystery. One that happened not in the wilderness, but aboard a luxury cruise ship in the middle of the ocean. A woman boarded the vessel for a relaxing vacation. Yet somehow, halfway through the trip, she vanished without a trace. Alaska is beautiful, but it is also unforgiving. Its forests stretch for thousands of miles, its waters are deep and cold, and its remote towns often sit hours or even days away from help. In a place like this, mysteries can remain buried for decades. The 7 cases you just heard about still have unanswered questions. Families continue searching for answers, hoping that one day the truth will finally come to light. But until that day comes, these stories remain part of Alaska's darkest mysteries. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, make sure to subscribe for more cases every week. And remember, sometimes the most chilling mysteries are the ones that leave no evidence behind at all.